Bras are these almost mythical items of clothing, not only because of the psychological and symbolic meanings they carry, but also their construction itself. If you ever struggled with finding a bra that actually works as it's supposed to, you're not alone. And one might think that someone with a fashion degree would actually know how to properly fit a bra, but it is only now, after a long time of research, pattern making disasters and many mock-ups, that I learned how all of these components work together to make a bra actually work, to make it fit as it should. Today I would like to share all the things I learned about underwire bras, about sizing, things one needs to consider to hopefully make your bra wearing and shopping experience easier. And I would like to do that while making an underwire bra from scratch to maybe motivate you and to demystify the process. This is a part of a series, by the way. I am building a whole underwear set. I already made some briefs and a soft bralette with free pattern instructions for you to sew along. And I strongly believe that one can invest time into making a well-fitted quality bra that will last a long time. And by choosing a fabric and color that is easily available, you can keep on remaking the briefs, because that takes almost no time at all, which will initially ensure an infinite matching set. I feel that in order to understand a garment properly, one needs to look at its history. And the history of bras and corsets goes hand in hand. Their primarily functions are creating a fashionable silhouette and holding the boubage in place. In German it is called BH, short for Büstenhalter, which literally translates into bust holder. And I want to draw your attention to the meaning of a fashionable silhouette, because essentially it translates to a fashionable body type, which nowadays changes rather quickly. And I would argue that the most fashionable bra today is one that isn't there at all, or at least gives the appearance of not being there. Because the fashionable body is a naked body. It has obviously a certain age and shape. However, it is seemingly natural, meaning it is not shaped by garments, albeit sometimes by Photoshop or plastic surgery. In my opinion, it is due to how we gradually blur the lines between the private and the representative. And I touched on that in a previous video, but I would like to take time to properly compose my thoughts on that in the future. However, especially with bras, we've come such a long way from essentially constructing this almost alien triangular shape in the 50s, thus creating a sort of barrier between the actual body and the decorum of it, to push-up bras of the 2000s that would accentuate and project the tissue towards the center, to now very clearly playing into imitation and perfection of authenticity. So because a bra is a very personal, intimate garment, I would like to encourage you to dismantle these concepts of what a beautiful silhouette is, what we should look like, so you'd be able to focus on the things that are important to you personally. Because ultimately your body may be fashionable or not, current tastes change rather quickly, but it is up to you to make your body your personal beauty standard, and with bras, comfort should always be the top priority. I decided to complete my set by making a kilted balconette bra that is slightly vintage inspired and will initially function as a sort of t-shirt bra for me. I would like to show you my sewing process, because at least to me these thingies used to look quite intimidating, mostly because of the underwire itself. This strip of wire is an extremely helpful ingredient for a well-fitted bra, but it's also usually the source for discomfort or even health issues if it's not fitted properly. Its initial function is to clearly divide the cup and the band, thus enabling good support and very clear lines of where the tissue starts and ends. And the width of the underwire is determined by the root of your breast, not the fullness of your breast tissue, but really just where the root starts and ends. Here, for example, you can see that the wire is not wide enough and the cup creates a sort of dent. Now this can also happen because the cup itself is too small. This effect is also being lovingly called an orange in a glass. But honestly, it just makes me mad that a company specializing in underwear doesn't even fit the models properly. Anyway, here's a wire that actually sits on top of the tissue. This can be extremely harmful and can create clots in the tissue over time. So when shopping for bras or making your own, please make sure to find an underwire that actually fits really well. But when you shop for bras, you don't see an underwire size, right? We have a band and a cup size. So how do you even determine your size? There is a guide on my health insurance website. You measure under the bust and over it, pretty standard, and okay, I'm a 70B. This is what I've been wearing for quite a while, because the size is also fairly available. Spoiler alert, it is not my size. Let's have a look at this one. Oh, it actually has a calculator. I'm not sure if you're supposed to measure over a push-up bra. I hope not. Okay, it's 70C and alternatively 75B or an 80A. This brand tells me I'm a 70E. Frankly, I'm surprised because this is very close. I know the cup size sounds unrealistically big, but I'll come to that later. This book by Dieter von Teese also has some instructions to determine the size. Wait, it's in inches. And it's a bit complicated. Okay, a 70A. These are very different sizes, and yes, I would usually recommend to go to a bra store and get a proper fitting. But the last time I did that, they told me I'm an 80A, and let's just say that I'm not. But I'm not saying that it's the salesperson's fault, and frankly not our fault as consumers that it's so complicated. This whole system has been actually created to simplify things, right? To make a clear system of standardized sizing to make the shopping experience easier. But the thing is, the closer a garment is to the body, and especially a bra that is actually supposed to give support to create a certain shape, the more complicated it gets. It's just not very realistic to determine a bra size based on two measurements alone, just from the construction point of view. For a brassiere maybe, but an underwire bra. And this whole idea that if you're a 75B, you can also wear an 80A, it's just, I personally don't believe that. But for now, yes, there are many sizes that are being covered. For determining your size, I highly recommend this bra size calculator from ABraThatFits. Or go get measured by a real professional who has been trained in that sort of thing. The size that you get might scare you at first, but honestly, if you're slightly deviating from the standard, there are not that many options left, which is kind of my case, and this is one of the reasons why I make a bra myself. And while yes, it takes effort and there are trials and errors along the way, I'd say it is time well invested. Once you determined your size, you can buy bra sewing packages and corresponding patterns. There are many different options out there. When buying bra making supplies, you can usually get these sheets to print out, cut it out and choose which size suits you. There are different kinds of underwires, obviously. Longer ones which create a more closed up, bigger cup. On the other spectrum there are these type of plunge wires. As you can see, the middle part is extremely short. They are designed that way to push the tissue towards the middle, but they also give less support because they are not holding the band and the cup in the middle at the gore. I decided to start completely from scratch and make my own pattern, and the underwire is initially the foundation on which a bra pattern is built, most notably the bra band itself. I am going with a fairly standard one that I took out of a well-trusted and extremely old bra of mine. When constructing the band, the underwire is actually stretched out because it is meant to be in a stressed position when being worn. It is not meant to stay still like that. This is why the band has to be very snug, comfortable but snug on the body. It needs to pull on the wire to a degree. Let me demonstrate. So this bra is very old. When I put it on, it's pretty clear that the cup is too big for me. There is a very clear gap here. But see, the band itself is very loose as well, and the wire is not tense at all. So let me stretch it out. See, now suddenly the cup itself is almost too small. Yes, it's actually too small. So don't underestimate a band size. This is why I think sister sizes are not very realistic. The difference between a 75 and an 80 band is just too big. But good news is, if you have a bra that doesn't fit properly because of the band, but the underwire and the cup itself do fit, you can just either shorten the band like so, or elongate it using these thingies. I'm making my band out of silk, as with the other pieces in this set. This part here needs to be extremely firm, so it'll hold the cups properly. This is why it is usually lined with this non-stretchy mesh. These side parts are usually made out of power net or power mesh. That is kind of a fabric that is actually a strong elastic. However, I also made these parts out of silk, the way I've seen it done on more high-end luxury type of bras. They are cut on bias and made slightly longer than they have to be, and I'm basically delegating all the work to the elastics. It will be their job to actually hold the band in place. And the reason we use elastics is to make the band as tight as possible, but so we are still able to breathe. And this is also one of the reasons bras should be washed by hand, to let the elastics stay as strong as possible. I'm connecting the lining to the centerpiece at the gore, turn it over and top stitch it on the side of the mesh. Then I secure it with a few hand stitches at the cups so that it won't annoy me too much. By connecting these parts together, I'm creating a sort of pocket for these plastic sticks. You can find them on most bras. They are not essential for smaller sizes, but they are there to give extra support for the band. As I already mentioned, the bra itself is a descendant of the corset, and fun fact, on older bras you can see this type of boning even inside of the cups sometimes. This is a direct reminiscence of a corset. But while a corset was able to hold the bobage by essentially distributing the weight upon the upper body, it is now the job of this comparably tiny band, thus making it one of the most important components when it comes to a well-fitted bra that actually gives support. So for larger sizes, I'd say wider bands and a wider elastic in general is a better idea. In that regard, I can only speak from my own experience, which is linked to my size from a construction point of view, so obviously feel free to correct me at any point. I'm sewing on my elastic on the right side with a zigzag stitch and then turning it over and securing it again. Now I can put in the sticks, and I'm going to secure the upper elastic later because first I need to work on the cups. So you probably wouldn't look at me and say, oh, she is an E cup. Because we have this idea in our head, right, of what an A cup, what a D cup looks like, regardless of the body type. But the thing is, it's just not how it works. All of these components, the cup, the band, the underwire, they all work together and are constructed in relation to each other. Although it is generally known, I feel this idea of, say, an A cup is small and a D cup is big is just so impregnated in our collective unconscious that we are not able to deviate from it. So the function of the cup is to sort of envelope, hold and distribute the fullness of the tissue into a shape. And this is where we are headed towards complications. First of all, the fullness can change even throughout the cycle, for some quite dramatically. And then if your root and fullness don't correspond in a standard manner, say your root is quite wide, but if you don't have that much fullness to begin with, the cup itself will be too big. On the other spectrum, if your root is rather narrow in comparison to your fullness, your tissue will probably spill out of the cup, which is constructed based on this underwire. What I'm trying to say is that any deviation from what is considered standard becomes sort of a problem. So, you know, no wonder we hate underwire bras so much and complaining about them all the time, because while yes, there are many sizes being covered, it should be probably doubled at least. At the end of the day, it's just numbers and letters to determine a pattern construction. And honestly, I'm kind of angry at myself because at a fairly young age I was assigned a 75B, a widely available size and the size that also applied to my general belief of what a 75B looks like. And this kind of prevented me to ever question this number. At some point I developed some clumps on the sides of my tissue here because the underwire was too narrow and would constantly rub on it. So I bought a 70C, a sister size, right? But the cups were then too big. Long story short, at some point I swore off underwire bras entirely. But I'm so excited because now I actually constructed a pattern that fits really well. I constructed it using the height of the center of the breast and the width of the tissue. And another thing I was able to solve with this pattern is the projection of the breast. Once again, the standard breast is pointing forward, but it is fairly common that they project outward or even inward. So all these factors are piling up, and by creating a pattern yourself, you can determine where the center of the fullness is, and the construction itself is a sort of back and forth between the natural shape and the shape you want to create. And this is why so many bra cups are made out of fairly stretchy materials, right? These materials have some give and eventually the ability to adjust to your natural shape. They also give this kind of barely there look underneath clothes. And I will make one in my next video. But first I wanted to complete my set with a foamed bra that I am going to line with silk. I'll come to my reasoning behind it in a second, but let's talk about the foams. There are different kinds with different strengths. The one I'm using is 2mm wide. There are obviously pre-shaped cups, but I'm using my own pattern, as I said. First things first, I am overlocking the top of the cup. On this bra you can see how the fabric can pull on the cup and eventually create a very distinct bra line. Now there are ways to avoid that by securing an elastic to the top of the cup, but my solution is to top stitch the lining on the wrong side while it's still in a straight line, pressing it, let it cool, and connect the foam cup pieces together. And only now I'm securing the bottom part of the cup with a zigzag stitch. Then I am pressing the cup into a rounded shape. There are more professional ways to do that obviously, but this is working for me. While it's steamy and warm, you can almost mold it like dough. Once you pressed it into a shape, it needs to cool down. And now I'm securing the front piece from the back of the cup and top stitching it on the right side. I decided to kilt the bottom of the cup and reduce the width between the stitching gradually. While this is mostly decorative, it gives a bit more hold and prevents the bottom somewhat from stretching. So I would like to elaborate on why I choose to make foamed cups for this bra, because I grew up in a generation where push-up bras seemed to be the only type of bra out there, and then rather quickly, around the 2010s I'd say, they became an item of ridicule, an item to trick the poor man, so to speak, because essentially what a push-up bra does, it pushes the tissue towards the middle and the foam itself is usually structured to create more fullness. It is an old-fashioned item nowadays, but although different in its function, it is still linked to any cups that are sort of foamed, although they don't give that sort of effect at all. I am now securing the other part of the lining, by the way. So foamed bras, t-shirt bras and very clearly push-up bras stand in an opposite to current taste. They are very clearly there and create a sort of barrier between the private body and the formed body presented to the outside world. And I think this clear distinction can be very beneficial in many situations. And while yes, a bra can also be a garment for seduction, to me it is a clear 2mm barrier to my private body. I am now going to connect the cup pieces to the band. I'll first hand stitch all of it. And if you're asking yourself why I do everything in such a tedious manner, it's mostly because silk is kind of a bitch, a very capricious fabric that needs lots of extra attention. Just one more thought or question, and then I'll stop with the whole foam stuff, I promise. Obviously, I think you should wear whatever makes you feel most comfortable and confident, but I feel like these 2mm won't change the appearance of fullness of the tissue at all. So I'm curious with bigger sizes why they usually avoid foamy cups, because in terms of comfort I find them kind of better and I find they provide better structure and support and this literal barrier. I mean, they literally look like tiny cushions. So yes, I would like to know. This is an underwire tunnel. They are also sometimes used for the side sticks here. And I am now going to connect it to the seam allowance of the bra cup, very carefully stitching it on so that the seam initially meets the original seam. But I am also leaving this bit loose for now. It will be stitched later on. Another problem I've encountered a lot, not only do brands have apparently different opinions on which size is which, but there is also vanity sizing. And vanity sizing, in case you don't know, it's basically a marketing gimmick where they switch the sizes to appeal to your vanity. So let's say you're shopping for a dress and you're usually a size 66, but society tells you that a size 69 is more desirable. And you try on a dress and you don't really like it, it's kind of itchy and bland, but then you look at the label and it says 69, black on white, and suddenly you feel this validation that you do in fact fit the societal norms of beauty. And now you're much more likely to buy it, although you didn't even like this dress in the first place. Plot twist, the dress is actually 66, the label is lying. And this also happens with bras, right? Which makes it almost unbearably impossible to find the right size anyway. In case you ever felt like you're going crazy because of sizing systems, most likely it's not you, it's them. Now I'm stitching the tunnel from the right side, again leaving this part here still open. Be sure to not stretch the tunnel itself while stitching, that might disfigure the cup in weird ways. I want to make this sort of strap that I found on this vintage bra from the internet. I made silk straps, it's pretty simple and I already showed how to do those in my previous video, so I won't bore you with details. I'm simply stitching the ends to the back of the band. The position is a personal preference. For the upper band, the elastic is usually slightly more narrow than the one at the bottom. I am stitching it on the right side again with the picot edge pointing downwards, and then turn it over and sew again with a zigzag stitch. I am cutting it down carefully here, and now I can top stitch the tunnel. But before, I am putting one side of the elastic for my strap underneath it. Now I can cut the tunnel down as well. In industrial production it is usually closed with a narrow zigzag stitch along the edge, but I decided to close the tunnel by hand. Now I can put in the underwire and close the tunnel here at the center as well. The underwire should lie flat against your chest because this is what the underwire does. It creates this clear division between the cups and the band. If it floats like this, it does not provide the same amount of support. The distance here can differ from person to person. Once again, you have to make sure that the underwires sit where your tissue starts, and they also obviously shouldn't poke into your chest. Now it's almost finished. The closure is another bra supply you'll need. As I already mentioned in the previous video, an adjustable closure like this is the best practice because it allows you to adjust your band size, and the new bra should be closed on the last hooks. I'm simply stitching them on again with a narrow zigzag stitch. I then tried on my bra to figure out the position and length of the strap, and I'm securing it to the cup with two parallel narrow zigzag stitches like so. Before checking the fit, obviously do the whole scoop and swoop thing. It can change the fit quite dramatically, even for smaller sizes. And now it's pretty much finished. The straps sit well and not too tight. The band is pretty tight and doesn't move, doesn't ride up in the back. The tissue is where it should be and the gore lies flat against the skin. And under t-shirts it looks pretty good as well. It is obviously not perfect, but I am very happy because I always wanted to have a bra in this particular design. My set is almost finished and I'm very excited because my next bra will be very quick and easy. I already made a mock-up. Bye. Bra.